Welcome into the Dallas Cowboys Report. I am your host, Tom Downey. As you guys know by now, Mike Nolan, he's been fired. Not a huge surprise. So today's video, as promised, we're going to take a look at some potential replacement candidates. Now, in the end, this is a pretty obvious decision for the Dallas Cowboys and Mike Nolan. It's not like they had a whole bunch of other options out there in terms of what to do when your defense is bad, because that's what happened here with the Dallas Cowboys. Now, this defense played better at the end of the season. I do want to make note of that. I do want to give some credit there that, yes, in the end, this Cowboys defense fared a little bit better, and they had more success and all of those things. But that doesn't really make enough of a difference in the end when you're near the bottom in almost every important statistical category outside, by the way, of takeaways. That was the one area that this defense had a little bit more success and played better overall down the stretch. But I mean, even if you want to use DVOA, which I do and we'll use later on by some candidates, as we will mention, that factors in, level of competition compared to other teams, balances all out, makes it, even it's nerd math, right? They were still outside the top 20. That's not very good. So because of that, I think the Cowboys had to make a change. Now the question becomes, okay, where do you start looking? Who do you look at in terms of, okay, well, which route do we go? Who do we end up firing? What decisions do we make there? The Mike Nolan replacement is important, and I do want to emphasize that part, because in reality, if you don't make a good hire, you're really in trouble if you're the front office, if you're Mike McCarthy. Kind of got to get this one right. It's not often you get to replace defensive coordinators twice unless one of those guys left for a better job. So with that in mind, I've got 10 names, some I like, some I don't like, in terms of potential Mike Nolan replacements. At number 10, this is Dom Capers, a Mike McCarthy buddy, which in general, don't really like all too much in terms of going that particular route. Of the guys we're going to discuss, this would by far be my least favorite option. I don't want to hire Dom Capers. I know the Dallas Morning News mentioned him, David Moore, as an option. I would hate this. I haven't made the t-shirts yet, but no boomers allowed 2021 is going to be the campaign slogan. Dom Capers, and it's not just the age part of it, it's the mindset. I don't want a boomer mindset. This is hiring a boomer. I don't want to go this route at all if I'm the Cowboys. He's 70 years old, and most importantly, the end of his tenure in Green Bay was bad. I don't want that. Look, if you want to hire someone with experience, okay. You want to go young, more innovative? Okay, actually, I'd like that quite a bit. To hire aging and bad? No, that is not something I want to pursue whatsoever. And before we break down the rest of my top 10 list, I want you guys to let me know, who do you want to hire as the Dallas Cowboys defensive coordinator? I'm going to make this question the pinned comment, and I want you guys to flood it with responses. So if you get the ad break here on YouTube, scroll on down and get your votes in. Let's go to number 9 on my list. That is Matt Patricia. And on one hand, I get it, I suppose. Like, oh, cool, you can go with a different option. You can have someone with experience. But the reality is, under Matt Patricia, folks, I think this team was the Lions defense, I should say, was actually worse than what the Cowboys showed this year. I don't want to go with Matt Patricia. I think you can do better. Lions' biggest problem was defense, and the front office, a Patriots disciple in Bob Quinn, they went Patriot style to help out Matt Patricia, and then the defense was bad. And most importantly, he never adjusted the scheme to fit his talented players, at least the ones that had talent. That's not something I want to do. Now, I think Matt Patricia could make some sense because he ran kind of a hybrid defense, and that's what Mike Nolan and McCarthy tried to do. So with that in mind, what defense do you guys want to run? Type in 43 for a 4-3 scheme, 34 for a 3-4 scheme. I also want to bring up this as a very important note, at least as far as I'm concerned. As it relates to the exact scheme, you can have some flexibility. And I don't get caught up too much in the exact style of scheme. In the end, you're going to run nickel like 70% of the time, and that's a four-man front, and that's what the Cowboys were this year. They ran mostly nickel. They did institute some elements of a 3-4 defense, and the two-gapping defensive line did not work at all, and that's, again, part of the talent issues there. What I do want to make sure, though, is that the Cowboys actually hire somebody who is going to fit the talent they have on the roster to the scheme. And they're not going to try to force players into the scheme no matter what, that they will adjust the scheme. They will make the scheme fit the players. I just misspoke, actually. That they will adjust the scheme to maximize the players. I don't think Mike Nolan really did that. In that mindset, I think 4-3 makes a little bit more sense. All right, number 8 on my list, Jim Leonhard, the Wisconsin defensive coordinator. I've been pretty impressed by that Wisconsin defense. Now, again, this is an example of hiring someone that would probably run a 3-4 scheme. Again, I'm not going to get too caught up in it. But of the college guys, especially with Marcus Freeman over at Cincinnati, now taking the Notre Dame defensive coordinator job, I think this is the best defensive coordinator option out there. So I wanted to make note. I just don't know if that's going to be a path the Cowboys truly end up pursuing. Now, whatever the Cowboys end up doing, we'll let you guys know. Even if it ends up being on one of my so-called off days, I'll come in and do a video for you guys just like I did with the Mike Nolan firing. So if you guys want to stay up to date on everything going on around America's team, I want you guys to subscribe now. That way you don't miss out on anything going on around the Dallas Cowboys. Number 7 on my list, and I did drop him down because, well, that's what the front office is going to end up doing, and the coaching staff with Mike McCarthy. Sean Lee. Coaching is going to be the next step for him. And make no mistake about it, hiring Sean Lee absolutely injects a pretty significant amount of risk. That absolutely adds some scenarios of, oh man, he could be anything. It truly is, he could be a boat. But unlike with, a certain quarterback, you don't really know what you have in your defensive coordinators. There's always risk involved there. I want Sean Lee on the coaching staff in some capacity. I would prefer a linebackers coach, but you know what? If you want to get wild with it and go with a player-turned-coach overnight, I think Sean Lee's probably the one example that I actually like for the Cowboys. Number 6, a name many of you guys want, and understandably so. How about Wade Phillips? Now, he was not brought back by the Rams after 2019. Instead, they hired complete unknown Brandon Staley, who legitimately has turned that defense into one of the best in the NFL. That's pretty darn significant as far as I'm concerned. But where Wade has been throughout his NFL career, he's always been good, right? He was good with the Rams, good with the Broncos, good with Houston. Of course, things did not end that well with the Cowboys, but he was great with the Chargers. Everywhere Wade Phillips has gone, he's been at least a league average defensive coordinator, if not better, looking at 2018 for the Rams, right? And then the whole Ramsey trades a little bit, blah, 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 but it eventually ended up working out fine, right? Where I get intrigued in terms of potential moves here by this Dallas Cowboys organization is what path they end up pursuing. Are they willing to go after the bigger name? Or are they going to be like, nah, we would rather just stick with what we have? And does Wade want to come back to Dallas, right? Does there have to be a Mike McCarthy connection? There is no Mike McCarthy connection to Wade Phillips. I would at least explore the interest, right? What I don't want, we'll talk more about this in a second here, is a quick search. You got time. You don't have to rush into hiring the very first guy you interview. Take your time, interview a bunch of candidates. If there's someone you really like along the way, awesome. But don't do what you did for the head coaching search and only hire one guy. And for those of you wondering, well, now, Tom, wait a minute. He's even older than Dom Capers. Wade Phillips, not a boomer. Yes, his age might say so. His mindset does not. Yes, he's always had a Von Miller, Aaron Donald type defensive player for the past 5 years when he's been in D.C., but I don't think Wade would qualify as someone who's a boomer. He let Aaron Donald do what Aaron Donald does best. That is being a 3 technique. I think he'd find a way to get the players to maximize themselves in his scheme because he would adjust the scheme to fit the players. Now, today's show is made possible by our sportsbook partner, that is BetUS. Head over to chatsports.com/bet and use the promo code that you guys see on screen. That is Cowboys125. That'll get you a 125% deposit bonus. That's chatsports.com/bet. Promo code Cowboys125. Go spend some money betting on the NFL playoffs and make some money in the process. All right, into my top 5 as I solo produce this show, by the way. Marvin Lewis, and there's some dual connections here between these two options, right? Or for this option as it looks at the Cowboys front office and for the Cowboys coaching staff, right? Marvin Lewis, fairly close with Stephen Jones. He, of course, was on the competition committee, co-chaired by, or not co-chaired, but as a member with Stephen Jones. I think that's at least worth mentioning, that at least the front office would be like, sure, yeah, we can make that work. And then as it relates to Mike McCarthy, and you do got to kind of scroll way, way back on this one, but I will make note, they coached together at Pitt in the early 1990s. Marvin Lewis also has had a very interesting run in recent years, right? He was this past year the Arizona State co-defensive coordinator. Before that, spent like 15 years as the Bengals head coach. 2002 was the Washington football team defensive coordinator, was the Ravens DC back in 1996-2001. It has been almost 20 years since Marvin Lewis was an NFL defensive coordinator. And he showed a willingness, by the way, to run 3-4 and 4-3. This past year at Arizona State, they ran a 4-3 defense. So in the end, I would be okay with hiring Marvin Lewis. I do worry a little bit about the lack of NFL DC experience, but Arizona State defense is pretty good this year against not great competition. I'd be down for it. He's not the number one guy on my list, but if you hire Marvin, it might not be a home run hire, but I think it's an upgrade over Mike Nolan, and it might be enough to get this defense back on track. Now, I gave you 10 full names here. 5 others that I at least wanted to make note of here, right? Winston Moss, who has ties to Mike McCarthy, spent a long time with him as over in Green Bay. I don't love that one. Same with Jim Haslett, hiring a buddy. Joe Barry's intriguing as the Rams linebackers coach, but also he's Rod Marinelli's son-in-law. Not sure that's the path the Cowboys will pursue. I'd be intrigued by Raheem Morris, but spoiler alert, we're going to get to other Falcons defensive assistants or former defensive coaches here in a little bit. Aaron Glenn intrigues me too. He's getting some NFL head coaching interest, a little bit like a Chris Richard style hire, but I think it'd be a good high upside swing for the Cowboys. So 5 of the names I wanted to at least mention. All right, now for the number 1 internal candidate, because I don't know why you would ever hire Scott McClurley at that point. Hire Sean Lee, right? That's good. That's George Edwards, who I actually liked more than Mike Nolan as a potential candidate for this team back when they originally hired Nolan. I like Edwards. He's been a DC before. He has ties to the Cowboys organization. There's the Mike Zimmer connection, which I think the Joneses would value there. If you're going to go in-house, I think George Edwards is the obvious candidate. And I would be surprised, frankly, if the Cowboys didn't at least interview Edwards for that role. It would also result in, I believe, a return to the 4-3 style scheme, which I think would be a good thing for this Dallas Cowboys organization. So I like the idea of going after George Edwards. I do, or maybe not even going after, retaining George Edwards there. I'm not sure it's the sexiest hire, and if you're worried about the lack of play calling experience under Mike Zimmer, that is absolutely fair. But I think it would be one at least worth considering if you're a member of the the Cowboys coaching search committee, Mike McCarthy type deal there. Frankly, I think it'd be an upgrade over Mike Nolan. Now let's get into the name that is drawing a lot of buzz right now. That is Joe Whitt Jr., the Falcons defensive backs coach. He is set to interview for the job on Sunday, depending on when you end up watching this. Maybe that interview is already over, whatever it ends up being. It's an intriguing name for a lot of different reasons. Number 1, the Mike McCarthy tie, right? 2008, and then for 10 years after that, he was with Mike McCarthy in Green Bay. He does, however, fit the younger target style mold, which I do appreciate here, in the sense that, you know what, guys? He's never been a defensive coordinator before. And maybe that's a little bit concerning, but at least you're going with a younger upside play, which I do prefer here. Now, the tricky part for Joe Whitt is that the recent couple years haven't been great, right? Falcons passing game coordinator this year. Falcons were bad on defense. I do want to make a note here, by the way, because you'll see the most passing yards allowed. Partially a volume stat, partially you played really good teams. And fun fact, the numbers there is a correlation, a strong one, frankly, in terms of predictive defensive success. The better quarterbacks you play, the worse your defense is. Crazy, I know, right? But the Falcons had a pretty tough schedule. Number 2, as it relates to offensive success, that's really tough there. So I'm not going to panic on that front. Was with the Browns for a year. That coaching staff got overhauled. But Packers in 2018 as the passing game coordinator. What gives me concern and what gives me pause here is that this kind of feels like the Cowboys being like, oh, hey, we'll just hire somebody who Mike McCarthy likes. Remember, last year, the reports are from both Brian Broaddus and Mike Fisher that Joe Whitt was actually the favorite over Mike Nolan, and then McCarthy made a last-second change. In a bubble, I don't mind hiring Joe Whitt. You guys can get your grades in here, A, B, C, D, or F. But if you only interview Joe Whitt and maybe like one or two other guys, and then you quickly hire him, that's a flawed process. I don't like that. Whitt, if you go through the whole entire process, interview all these guys, maybe like a C, it could be a lot worse. I think it could be better, though, as well, and that gives me some concern. So let me know what you guys think here. Grade the potential hiring of Joe Whitt, if that is the route the Cowboys go, since he's the only known interview right now. A, B, C, D, or F. All right, number 2 on my list, that is Dan Quinn, who many of you have brought up before. I would like this idea. I think that if you can hire someone who has a good background as a defensive coordinator, has been proven in that role, I think that makes some sense. Now, yes, the Falcons' defense got out of hand. There was not great talent there, and there's a direct correlation causation there, right? Was good as the Seahawks defensive coordinator. This is a move I would be on board with. Now, I do want to make note, I think you're going to see a lot of interest in guys like Dan Quinn. And I do wonder if the Cowboys and Mike McCarthy would do it or if they would just go hire a buddy. If you hire a buddy, I'm going to be pissed. If you don't do a full in-depth search, I'm going to be pissed. So what is your confidence level in then, folks? Get your votes in here for me. For the Cowboys to make the right defensive coordinator hire. Rate this for me on a scale of 0 up to 10. Number 1, though, and I forgot to mention this, 4 and 3 might be your most plausible ones as we sit here right now on January 9th. The top 2 guys for me, though, would be Gus Bradley and Dan Quinn. I think Bradley's a really good defensive coordinator. Now, in general, that's a tough thing to figure out because we don't have a lot of experience. A lot of these guys are either they've been fired or they haven't been a DC before. So you got, concerns on both sides. But Bradley's been a good defensive coordinator when the team has been healthy. And again, they haven't always been healthy. That's a significant red flag there. But I like the idea of going after Gus Bradley. The Raiders might end up getting him. That'd be a bit of a disappointment. I'd go hire him right now in terms of still do a search. But if you don't at least try and interview Bradley and Quinn, what exactly are you guys doing? So again, let me know in the comment section, folks, who you guys want as the next Dallas Cowboys defensive coordinator. Let me know. Is it Gus Bradley? Is it Dan Quinn? Is it someone I didn't mention altogether? Let me know what you guys think in the comment section. Scroll on down and respond to that pinned comment.